Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a panel discussion about blockchain for good. The topic itself is very interesting, and many people currently are reading about the trendy news coming from the blockchain, metaverse, I guess NFTs, DAO, DeFi, and all these interesting, topics that you all probably are following on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have an expert panel today talking about how the blockchain can be used for good. So I know you have heard about different stories, but it is at the end of the day a technology. It can be used for good and bad, and we are going to talk about many ways that the government, non-for-profit, and private sector might be able to leverage blockchain. Please stay with us through this talk for another, I guess, 40 minutes or so. We will be answering your question through this conversation, and if you have anything to ask, please put it in the chat. I'm also looking forward to see who is live and where are you watching us from. I know that we have a global audience, and we are looking forward to see each and every one of you today. This panel discussion is part of the World Innovation Day hackathon. This is still running, so make sure you still have time. Another 2 days before the hackathon starts, just join via worldinnovationday.com. And there are lots of interesting bounties, prizes from our amazing sponsors, Polygon, Filecoin, Google, and Oracle. I will probably wait another couple of seconds for you to join, because I want to make sure that everybody joins before we start this discussion. And then I'm going to add our panelists, and we start this panel. All right, awesome. We already have people from different part of the world. Hello, Sushant. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing you well. All right, we have some people also from YouTube watching us. Michael, already putting question here. That is great. From India, we have Navneet. And also we have Samuel from UK. And Kazi from Germany. That's awesome to see that we are getting our audience from different parts of the world. All right, from India, from Italy, Romania, Frankfurt, Kenya. I can see that lots of people are interested to know about this topic. I know that you all know this is a trendy topic, so let's just jump into this discussion. I'm also excited about, we have a great panel. I'm going to add them into the live discussion. So here we have Anthony Day, blockchain leader, LinkedIn top voice, a huge amount of followers, talks about different interesting topics like blockchain, metaverse, crypto, and we have Kathleen Chu, head of marketing and communication at Polygon Technology. Everybody probably knows Polygon already. If you don't know, definitely check it out. And I'll ask her also to give us a little bit of information about what amazing stuff that you're working on. Also, Leanne Kemp is CEO and founder of Everledger. Thank you very much for joining us. We would like to know a little bit about you. What is the interesting blockchain project that you're working on? Please.
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I founded Everledger in 2015 predominantly to track diamonds from the source of the mine right the way through to the retail network. There probably isn't a consumer on the planet that hasn't watched Leonardo DiCaprio's Blood Diamond movie or understood more recently the importance of sanctions with countries like Russia. But that question from consumers, where does it come from, was never answered until we came along.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Leanne. Anthony. Kathleen.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. It's really, I'm really glad to be here and seeing everyone from different places around the world. It's amazing. So I'm a former Bloomberg journalist and got interested in blockchain after realizing how this technology has so much potential to solve many of the world's problems. I've been in the space since 2017. During the past 5 years, I've worked with for the biggest DeFi protocol, Maker Foundation, now MakerDAO, which has about 15 billion total value locked. I now lead communications at Polygon, a leading Web3 platform that provides scaling solutions, a range of blockchain solutions for developers. So at Polygon, we work on scaling solutions specifically for Ethereum and utilizing modular blockchain, zero knowledge proofs. So yeah, that's kind of a short intro for me. It's great. Very excited to be here.
Thank you, Kathleen. Last but not least, Anthony.
Hey guys, how's it going? Anthony Day here. I've spent most of the last 6 years of my career focusing on enterprise and government blockchain adoption across a whole wide range of different areas: digital identity, professional and medical credentials, supply chain management, provenance, and a whole bunch of other things. I've been working in the space with companies like Deloitte, with IBM, and more recently moved to a Web3 specific organization that I'm currently under stealth mode for, but very excited to be getting deeper into the area of Web3, metaverse, NFTs, and kind of the future of the decentralized web. So very excited to be here. And Steve, thanks for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to just make sure I put the note here that I am not a blockchain expert. I just like all the technologies, and I've been reading and I guess watching and reading about it for about 2 years. So that's just like casually knowing about it. So I'm going to jump into the first questions. Like, what is the opportunities do you see for blockchain technologies to be used for social good?
Do you want me to kick off an answer on that one, particularly in the world
Sure,
of diamonds?
Yeah.
Well, certainly, I mean, there's very many things that occur in supply chains, particularly those that are opaque, that are non-transparent. Whether we consider the diamond industry, where the source of many mines in the world only reside in 6 countries, 90% of the diamonds are cut and polished in India, where I am today. And then, of course, it runs out across the entire globe to retailers and consumers. The social good that's afforded by industry is, in fact, quite pronounced and large, supporting everything from orphanages right the way through to investing in significant infrastructure for renewable energies. But those stories are never captured, nor told, nor proven. And I guess when we think about the contributions that come back across the supply chain, it can certainly lift the living wage of an entire community, let alone an entire country. And that's most certainly proven, particularly with an industry like the diamond industry. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, the big question as we start to think about the evolution of material science, over the last 500 years, we've only really discovered diamonds and mined them. You know, they're one of nature's wonders of the world, one could say. But given the transformation of science, we can now lab produce diamonds. So man-made diamonds are a very real thing. And often those stories are told about how sustainable those lab-grown diamonds are. But when we're able to connect technologies and understand the measurement of not just only energy sources, but the gases that are pumped into effectively nuclear reactors that emulate the core of the earth, we're finally in a position where we can start to produce not only the price that the diamond would cost a consumer to buy, but how about the cost to the planet? And I think then consumers can make a full conscious decisions about whether rare and forever, or rare is real, those slogans of the industry are really an important part of the purchasing program.
Absolutely love that, Leanne. And Leanne has taken possibly one of the hardest, most complex and difficult challenges in and around blockchain technology, which is trying to validate and demonstrate things that touch many different hands and many different countries and many different geographies around the world, and to be able to put that onto a shared, trusted technology platform that then, as a result, can yield those other benefits. So, I mean, if you want to start in the hardest place, Leanne's been there and done it, and there's probably very few out there who've got credible, real-world stories about how to do that, how not to do it, I guess. I probably want to just kind of step back and just give for those who are less indoctrinated in the world of blockchain technology, why does this matter? Right? I mean, technology is here ultimately to help us do the jobs that we've always tried to do, but do them better, do them more efficiently, do them with more trust, do them with less fraud, do them faster, do them across borders. Right? Technology, all the different types, right? Cloud, AI, internet, all of that are tools for us to be able to transform the way we do things. What blockchain does particularly well is to provide kind of a shared information layer or shared data layer around what's happened. So a ledger or a historical record of stuff. It does automation of activity quite well. So we can build applications that are hosted on shared servers that are hard to take down, that can be accessed by anybody. And as a result, you can automate tasks or have things done in a programmatic way that, as a result, the computer runs them and therefore are less manual, less risky, faster, etc. You have the ability to overlay identity. That doesn't mean that necessarily you have to identify yourself, but there is a unique identity for you, your wallet, your car, your factory, your wind turbine, whatever it might be, such that we can attribute the data and the automation with the identity of what we're transacting with or where we're getting data from, so that then, as a result, the system itself can create trust without having to physically be located next to each other. That allows us to do things across borders, or in a way that doesn't unfairly share data attributed to individuals or companies that might be company secrets. All of that, right? These are the technology components that we then get to go and transform the way we do things today, whether that's E, S, or G, right? So, environmental, we talk a lot about carbon credits. We talk a lot about circularity. We talk a lot about the provenance or the originality of things. Social impact, Leanne was talking about that, and the ability to lower the barriers for economic participation, whether that's play to earn games or whether that's just demonstrating that people are being paid a living wage fairly. And then governance, you look at the transformation, and again, Kathleen will know a lot about this from her time with Maker. The ability to give fair representation or fair voting rights to people that is transparent, that isn't open to fraud or censorship. The ability for people to govern systems with economic models that are win-win-win for everybody, as opposed to centralized platforms that can only there to help grow for their own benefit, with the users being the product. Right? All of these are some of the problems we can transform, and there's so much more. But let's start there and pick it up. Kathleen, I'll give you the mic for now.
Thank you, Anthony. Really appreciate that. And yes, you're right. I think you cover a lot about identity, how important that is. So I'd like to share three examples on how I think blockchain will transform our society. You covered pretty much the first thing I want to talk about, but just kind of explain it from kind of looking at from a Web2 perspective. We can see that with the digital transformation in the past, we see how information can be exchanged very easily. And that also, as you mentioned, that means that personal information can be viewed or even hacked. And so there's a lot of issues that we can improve for sure, utilizing blockchain technology. And in Web3, you basically control your own data and identity. And this is just the starting point, right? There's a lot of things that we can do to improve and improve the technology itself. So, for example, to take a ZK zero knowledge proof as an example, which is a type of cryptography where one party can prove the truth of something specific to another party without disclosing any additional information. So what Polygon is working on, just briefly mentioned, Polygon ID is the first ZK knowledge-based type of ID that users can utilize, and it's a privacy-based kind of a blockchain solution, right? Scaling technology. So that's something that Polygon's at the moment is working on. So we believe that, as you mentioned earlier, Anthony, that in the area of identification, it will improve the way we do things. And I remember joining a panel back 3-4 years ago in Singapore that I think it was from also from United Nations. Someone's mentioned that that ID has been a problem. It really creates inequality when you can't really prove yourself, your own identity, and that means land rights, any financial assets. So this is really crucial in how we look at ID going forward, identification going forward. And two, what I want to talk about is decentralized finance. I know it's been around for 3 years, and I think many people are looking at DeFi in a very different lens. But I want to just to really emphasize, originally, this technology, this decentralized finance, is really created to level the playing field. What the original kind of founders of all these DeFi protocols, what they were trying to build is something that's that would provide financial accessibility to anyone, anywhere in the world. So that's for the first time, you know, on this planet of Earth, you can basically put something amount of money in the for those people who doesn't even have access to banking. You can start earning interest rate. So it's really revolutionized how we look at financial services. I know that I think whenever a new technology comes out, there's always a way to use it for the good and also for for other purposes. So I think in the future, DeFi will still come back and will get a lot of momentum going forward as we improve the way we manage these kind of DeFi protocols. And the third thing I want to talk about is digital collectibles. NFT, but I know we probably want to leave that discussion for later. But I think NFTs, they are not really just a digital copy or an expensive copy of something. It's really about a sense of belonging, a sense of belonging that you're part of a community. Also, what's more powerful is that for the first time, artists can actually get a share of their work, and it can be traced when it's resold. Artists, it can include musicians, and artists, creators, writers. For the first time, you can actually get paid well. So that's kind of how I envision the future of NFTs, and they're just not simply wasteful collectibles that for rich people. So that's all from me.
Cool. That's great. That's awesome. So yeah, we all heard about great opportunities that blockchain can provide for the society. I mean, for the corporate society, content creators, and all. I would like to hear also about the challenges, like especially non-for-profits that are kind of forefront of the, I guess, the social good projects and initiatives. How do you see if they are leveraging the blockchain right now, if you have any examples? And also, if not, what are the challenges for the non-for-profits to enter into the space?
Leanne, I'm wondering if you might want to kind of dip into the challenges with digital twins and kind of being able to attribute things happening in the real world with things on a blockchain and a digital world, because I feel like that's possibly the kind of the best place to start for anybody, really, right?
Yeah,
sure.
we certainly have well-supporting not-for-profit organisations that are important incumbents in industry. A prime example is the GIA, the Gemological Institute of America. They grade and certify 90% of the world's diamonds. They're most profitable not-for-profit company. But ultimately, the triangulation of their data, the laboratory data, is critically important to validate the physical object. Now, of course, diamonds, we're able to put a number, like a number plate of a car exists within a diamond, and we're also able to capture the puff, the physical unclonable features of a diamond, and triangulate that together to know that that physical diamond is as it says it is on the blockchain, and connect those two together. But industry is supported in small artisanal mining communities where NGOs are required to be able to identify that that mine exists, that the workers are truly on site and working. And so to enable technology in environments where it needs to be a light touch technical layer, or a distributed layer like we are all working in, because arguably centrally cloud controlled environments just simply does not work in the physical world in many of the regional locations where we venture. The third part is working in the space to enable proof of donations. We see so many times this sort of greenwashing effect, 1% of everything sold will be donated back to support a village in a location. How do we really know that that money has been returned? And so coupling a supply chain traceability program like Everledger, and even embarking upon how do we provide for really great sort of NFT deployments where the proof of donation becomes an anchor point of trust, but also is an entirely new way to sort of fund these not-for-profit sectors and small communities.
It's a brilliant description, and it doesn't get, I think, a really good embodiment of the different challenges of creating digital twins, or bringing together the people that are impacted by the technology that you're looking to build, or who exist in the processes that you're looking to transform. Because if you're trying to issue tokens or NFTs or something to individuals, identities to individuals, typically that's going to be digital. So on what are they going to store that, and what are they going to manage that? In communities where there's low coverage of internet or low penetration of 3G connections, how are we going to address those particular challenges? Do we need to invest in digitally enabling the communities that we're serving to start with, before we even think about blockchain enabled transformation or supply chain transformation? Because ultimately, if the people that we're trying to help can't benefit or engage with the platform, we've got a user experience or user interface problem before we've been started. Then you get into process integrity. So I think Leanne mentioned it, but when you start getting into carbon footprint or scope 2 and scope 3 emissions data, who's validating that the data that's being updated is actually accurate? Data on a blockchain is typically censor resistant, will be there forever. But if you're giving it garbage data, you're just basically creating garbage forever. So how can we, with diamonds, in your case, you've got a certifying body who have clear standards and clear data formats for identification. That's much more difficult when you're talking about production facilities, or when you're talking about vehicle emissions, and so on and so forth. So your creation of that data, your validation of that data, typically needs to then go through some other certification process. And if that needs to be done by a physical person holding a clipboard on a monthly basis, you have an inefficient system. And so whether you're working in the NGO space, private sector, public sector, if you're working with any non-digitally native processes, that's really hard.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I can actually vouch in here a little bit, because data is very important aspect in data science and AI, like kind of like the I guess the raw material to build any sort of machine learning algorithm. And without data, like it's just if it's noise data, or if it is data is not available, it is impossible to build anything meaningful. I can see that that's sort of in a similar way. Blockchain is a holder of the data, and if it is not the quality, it's just garbage. For us, it's garbage in, garbage out. For you guys, garbage in and stay forever. Caitlin, sorry, would you like to add anything here?
Sure. I was gonna share how so stablecoin DAI was used for disaster relief. So they were a few tests back 2 years ago, I think, in the island of Natawatu, on a specific island this one specific island, there were tests being done of disaster relief, fast and easy and traceable. So DAI was used. DAI is the stablecoin created by MakerDAO, and that was used. And there were a couple of kind of test run, and the challenges I believe that was faced back then was the stability of stablecoin. Even though DAI doesn't really fluctuate that much, of 0.8, 0.98, 00, like the difference is a very small percentage, but nonprofit organizations would need that precision in order to really provide that disaster relief, because like any bookkeeping professional accountant would know that the numbers have to match. So I think that was one of the challenges back then. I think there are many ways that things can, the technology itself can be improved for non-for-profit to utilize the technology more.
Thank you. We talked about non-for-profits, and at the end of the day, governments are very important to regulate and I guess supervise any sort of activities in the countries. I know that blockchain just came to sort of be independent from the government bodies, but at the end of the day, I would like to understand more how blockchain is being leveraged by the governments, and what is the global landscape of, I guess, regulatory activities and the government initiatives in this space?
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, Australia, proud nation of mine, definitely now has a national blockchain roadmap strategy, which is fantastic. But unashamedly, it only came about in the last couple of years. Certainly from an ESG perspective, the sovereignty of critical minerals, Australia is the largest producer of critical minerals in the world, particularly lithium. And when we think about the race is on for rare earths and electric vehicle batteries and all of that renewable energy space, governments need to not only just be concerned about trade partnerships, but also how can they sort of drive this technology towards a usable, ethical trade tool so that other countries form confidence in their trade partnerships. And, this perfect utopic world of having a single digital trade window where goods are actually pre-authorized through international challenges and channels is probably not that far away from realization. I kind of sit on the backdrop at a time now where we see this heightened concern around Russia. The OFAC sanctions are coming in now, of course, for the US, and that Russia, the largest producer of diamonds in the world, cannot sell diamonds into the US. Could there be, in 10 years' time, climate sanctions being put on countries? If certain countries are not adhering to, global initiatives, what will happen post-2030? Is the war going to turn from, the sanctions of trade to the sanctions of climate? And so by virtue of that, many governments, I would say, are awakening to the technology. There's a tsunami of use cases around blockchain, cryptocurrency, NFTs. It's just a huge noisy space. But on the backdrop of that, there's very real world supply chains that move and consistently move. And there's massive tectonic plate shifts. I would not have said that governments were awake to how important blockchain is as a core fabric or a protocol of, firstly, the internet, let alone a mechanism of trade or network technologies. But I do think we're starting to become awakened. But we're still in that really awkward state of adolescence. The education of government probably sits at these wobbly 2-year-old knees where we're still knocking things over awkwardly. But arguably practitioners, I'd consider myself a practitioner in this space that's focused in a very specific discipline, is now not providing vision statements. We're actually providing proof of value. We can point to where this technology is working daily. We can point to that being a large percentage of our supply chain globally. We can show use cases where we're able to prevent and or ensure that the OFAC sanctions are hard rule sets. So I think it's a very exciting time to finally, I'm excited about working with government. I never thought I would actually say that ever in my career, but there is an opportunity to get excited about working with government.
I could jump in on this one for about an hour if I wanted to, and I'll try and keep it relatively brief, because government do play a critical role, as much as the kind of broader topic of borderless, digital, trustless exchange of value is really, really impactful and really, really interesting. Ultimately, we live in countries that are governed by governments, and we interact for the most part in fiat currency. So our interaction between the jurisdictions in which we live and pay our taxes with the technology we use on a day-to-day basis still is inherently interlinked. And so we can't avoid it, unfortunately. As Leanne said, countries like Australia are starting to increase the amount of interest discussion at a national level. I just put out a podcast with Steve Vallis from Blockchain Australia last week, week and a half ago. And he was saying, 2 years ago, he was having to force his way into conversations and no one was interested. Now at a government level, the impact of blockchain, distributed ledgers, cryptocurrencies, digital voting, digital identity is being talked about in most chambers most of the time, which feels like things are on the up. When you're talking about where does that matter, there's a whole bunch of different things. And it's not just about how do we regulate a database. Because honestly speaking, tomorrow you could go out and create a consortium of parties with a shared private ledger, right? Call it a LAN, local area network, and they could be creating similar applications and similar functionality without ever worrying about crypto. And that doesn't need to be regulated, and for the most part isn't regulated unless you talk about antitrust, which actually in industries like the motor vehicle industry, or the automotive industry, very significant, right? So it's very challenging for large manufacturers to collaborate on certain projects, even though there's a clear benefit. So the government consideration there. Talent is significantly important, right? If we're working with emerging technologies at this point in time in blockchain and Web3, there is a significant shortage of engineers and talent because everyone's pooling around the biggest and best projects. We need more projects, we need more people. And so the national position on education around technology talent, around tax and tax regulation, and the ability for people who want to work in a borderless global community to come and live and work where the projects should be, right? Or where they would like to be. It's not all remote all of the time, right? A lot of these people still want to live and co-locate. And so you see countries like the UAE or Portugal, where tax rates are particularly low, where the taxation of cryptocurrency is relatively low. In Germany, if you hold on to your crypto for more than a year, if that's part of your compensation package, if you're being paid in tokens, you don't pay tax on that. Other countries like the UK and Ireland, if you get issued tokens, you get taxed at between 30 and 50% on receipt, and then you get 30% on any gains afterwards. Now, you tell me whether you're going to sign up to go and work and live in a country when a large proportion of your salary is being paid in crypto, to be able to be taxed in that way, when other countries are far more competitive. So it's not necessarily just about academia, it's also then about taxation. Regulations around digital assets and crypto assets. If you want your financial services sector to be competitive, the UK came out about 4 weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, saying they want to become a global center for digital assets. You've got to regulate for that. You've got to make that acceptable. You've got to understand the rules around custody, around regulating custodians for, or issuers of cryptocurrency. Kathleen's based in Japan. Incredibly strict regulations in Japan today around what it takes to become a custodian business issuing crypto. So to the point where the only people who can really afford to do it are the biggest banks and payments providers. And that then leads you down a specific alleyway around what your blockchain ecosystem is going to look like. If you're in Japan, it's going to be dominated by big financial institutions who may not necessarily be motivated to encourage decentralization. And that's the final one for me, is actually governments themselves. To what extent do they want to create decentralization? I'm British, I live in Ireland today, but you look at the UK, they are the original command and control centralized economy. It is not in their national DNA to decentralize. Whereas you look at countries like Switzerland or the Netherlands and many others, where they are already into decentralized governance at local level, where local citizens are empowered by local communities are more empowered to make decisions, because that's the way that they've always run things. It's the way that the Dutch managed to keep the water away from the banks of the dikes, is by decentralizing. If you had every information feeding up to the middle to then filter back down again, you'd be living underwater in times of crisis, right? So the national DNA for these things is also critically important. I could go on about this for a long time, but this is a multifaceted topic that is not just about am I going to get taxed on my crypto?
100% agree, and I can vouch for that. Like I can see the government in general will always not so eager on the new technologies until they see that they're forced to. Like that's the case in many cases in many countries. You would see the regulations and frameworks and everything will come after kind of it is mass adopted by a lot of people in the community. I mean, we are seeing the same for AI and AI ethics and responsible AI. It started lately that everybody right now talking about responsible AI and ethical frameworks are copy and paste of each other, and every country are doing the same kind of thing. They just changed a little bit of the wording, and that's good. But still, we are far away from actioning and having things in the action. It's more of a voluntary sort of a initiative for the companies. But the crypto was a little bit different because they definitely have things to lose if the crypto is being mass adopted by companies. So they started first like by making sure it is not easy to be leveraged, and then now they're thinking how they can make it easier. That's my observation. Kathleen, would you like to add anything?
Sure, sure. I think many, as you mentioned earlier, Steve, about how governments are tend to act a little bit slower. I think what I'm seeing is that the governments around the world are trying to basically understand the technology itself and its implication, and their job, and especially regulatory bodies, they want to make sure that regular people are protected. People who are not so familiar with the technology will be protected. So in Japan, even though the regulatory environment is very strict, I can see the efforts by the regulator in trying to understand, and they actually very, very knowledgeable group of people at the FSA, JFSA. The discussion is even very, very in depth about now we have smart contracts that can regulate. That can pretty much regulate and kind of enforce of how we do things. Then what they ask a really like good question: what would be the role of a regulator? So I think regulators approach new technology differently. They have different kind of different area they must cover. So to me, this is a natural kind of step of development. But at the same time, there's another issue, which is when it comes to global competition, we used to be bound by where we are located. I think Anthony mentioned about tax. It is very crypto is heavily taxed in Japan, and it's almost not funny. So when it comes to global competition, how do you really keep those talents, and how do you say, for example, in a country like a developed country like Japan or Singapore, how do you keep that competitiveness? So Web3 is full of opportunity, but how do you approach it without risking a large population, because they would have to consider what if something goes wrong, right? So it's a very difficult balance to strike, I think.
And just very briefly on that one also, different countries have different imperatives and priorities, right? If you're Singapore, you have a more limited pool of natural resources compared to an Australia. So actually talent and being cutting edge in the areas of technology and finance are much, much more important to you because you're more about digital assets natively. If you are, a Japan or a China or an Australia or a UK where your national output is more diversified, your focus or your willingness to lead on technology compared to a Singapore or UAE, very, very different. So again, you see different national priorities feeding down to how high emerging technology feels as a priority. We all love it and we all live in it and we all want every country we work in to make it a top priority. But then everybody working in AI probably feels the same way. Everybody working in medicine probably feels the same way, right? And so we all get these different experiences wherever we are.
Totally agree. And I would like to go to our, I guess, last question, which is like one of the trendiest topics in blockchain these days. If you're watching certain news, especially if you're on Twitter, we are seeing the NFT is just kind of going crazy, especially with the prices that have witnessed for some JPEGs, which I'm not going too deep into this, but I would like to understand what is the current state of these NFTs, and are they something that can be leveraged for good? We have I guess, both sides of this discussion. We have people that are, as they say, bullish about the NFTs, and they believe that it's going to revolutionize the way that we are living. And then we have the other side, and they believe that it's just burning all our resources and electricity for just making some quick buck for flipping. So that's just two sides of it, and I'm going to put the questions to our amazing experts.
Look, I think the transition from supply chains to value chains, the creator community as a heart of value creation and credibility around ensuring that people who are providing for services are paid fairly and duly is a movement of our time. I have been in supply chain traceability for 25 years, and I've never actually had more popular today than Madonna was in the 80s, because when you combine blockchain, supply chain, ESG, and carbon together, and all of a sudden you've got Everledger, you know that this thing's here to stay for a number of generations. So, but it's not that sexy. It's not as sexy as NFTs. And so for me, I feel as though there's a certain sequence of heightened expectation, but over time we see kind of the boring part of the world, the hard problems to solve, using these different ways upon which solving those problems are probably here to stay. So I would question in my mind is, I wonder if the sort of the increased appetites of government, even large corporations, I wonder if it still would be here today looking at the problems to be solved with solutions like Everledger and blockchain and Polygon and all of the incredible technology providers we have in the space. Would it be here if not for the hype cycling of crypto, NFTs, ICOs, DAOs, etc.? And I just wonder if that's what we need to help bring the party to the supply chain and ESG world. I'm all for it, because I think ultimately the main stage player after all of this is going to be the boring companies like us that are doing the hard stuff. That's not to take away from the world of crypto, NFTs, and the like, but there is a significant world that relies upon real world supply chains that will not go away. We have to still eat, wear something, and ensure we do it consciously.
Absolutely no contest on that one. A lot of the digital transformations that we're trying to do are the unsexy back office settlement and reconciliation, data provenance type of activities that are a long way away from pictures of monkeys. I think it's also important for this audience to understand that non-fungible tokens there are so many different applications for what that is. I posted on Monday this week a kind of an overview, if anyone wants to go to my LinkedIn and check it out, of there are many different use cases for tokenization of things, right? The application that people have been drawn to, which yes has some kind of financial and speculative nature to it, but the lowest common denominator, or the easiest to engage with, is pictures of artwork that have tokens that relate to them, because everybody can participate. You just download a wallet, buy an NFT or trade an NFT, and that's you. You don't have to worry about the diamond supply chain to participate in that. But if you're looking at other applications for it, we can talk about food, we can talk about licenses and intellectual property, we can talk about that token representing identity or a ticket, or the right to participate in a communities or enter a Discord channel. It could relate to virtual land. It could relate to music rights. There's so many different components of what you can tokenize, and then as a result, prove ownership for, fractionalize ownership of, to increase liquidity or to give people an opportunity to invest in a particular vehicle. That could be real estate, that could be a token. The ability to collateralize that and have lending against it if that particular piece of art is valuable, or if that particular invoice, right? It could relate to trade finance at the same time. We can tokenize practically anything. And so when people hear NFT, the immediate association at the moment is pictures of monkeys. The same way that when people hear crypto, the immediate association is Bitcoin. But actually, we have a job to do, and this is all of our collective jobs, is to help expand the understanding of the applications so that more people can make use of the technology in places that matter to them or that they can relate to.
I think both Anthony and Leanne explained that very well, and I really have nothing to add. It's really what we have now is really a technology that can really change many people's life in terms of specifically regarding to artists. And there are many, obviously many other types of applications and the ways that we can utilize this technology.
Thank you very much, Kathleen, Anthony, and Leanne. I'm sure that our audience got a lot of value from this discussion. For me, it was really enlightening. I kind of learned a lot about the blockchain and how the blockchain can be used for good. So the good news is this is a technology that can be used for good. So for you that if you haven't done the research and you feel negative about it, please keep an open mind, do the research. And tomorrow we have AI for good discussion. I'll be able to talk a little bit more in the discussion tomorrow, and feel free to leave the comments and questions for the next panel as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.